couldn't make it this time.
Oh, you are in Sweden, my friend.
Yeah, but I'm 500 kilometers from there and running a startup or two. So yeah, I didn't have the time this time. I actually would have actually shoot off my arm to go, but the thing is that things. Yeah.
Yeah, I hope to
Johanna,
go.
you want to go to the one on the 28th?
Are you going?
Yeah.
It's going to be 28 or 29, and I'll know probably tomorrow.
At the end of November, right, Tyler?
Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. That's pretty close.
And then there's another one, December 14th.
Oh, it's so great to be so close to Stockholm. I have to connect with Sarah.
You mean you have one every 2 weeks?
I'm doing it
awesome.
every 3 weeks, so I can do 3 while I'm here.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, that's why I'm staying here, so I can do 3 really quickly and then go back.
Yeah,
Tyler, that'll be super awesome.
Yep.
You have to catch up with
just gotta let me know if you want anything from Amsterdam, but that which will not get me in trouble traveling with.
No, they have everything here. So, where is my sound?
You are a little bit far from your mic, Tyler.
Okay, well, before you said I was too close, so hang on.
You were good.
I would guess that you're using the computer microphone right now, not the external.
I think I'm good right now, right?
A little far.
Sounds like a bit duller than usual, but you perhaps don't have your own equipment with you.
Oh. Okay, should be good now.
Yes.
Okay. Here we go. Okay, I'm ready. You're ready. We're all ready.
Air horn. And then did you tweet the live stream?
I did. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, great.
So
let's start.
The top story today, Tuesday, November 9th, is that Robinhood says an unauthorized party obtained a list of email addresses of 5 million users, full names for another 2 million users, for a total of 7 million users, and even more info on a very small number of 310 users. Late in the evening of November 3rd, Robinhood experienced a data security incident. An unauthorized third party obtained access to a limited number of users. And it's being very, very widely reported on by CNN, TechCrunch, BBC, The Verge, Reuters, Wall Street Journal, Bloomberg, Jesus, everybody. Economic Times. And reading some of the tweets, Brian Krebs, who's like a cybersecurity expert, says, investment platform Robinhood says a security incident led to the theft of email addresses for 5 million customers. It's safe to expect an uptick in phishing schemes targeting Robinhood users. And that's a really great point, which is they got all the email addresses of the Robinhood users. Now, what's going to happen next is, as Brian well knows, whoever stole those email addresses can now send emails to those Robinhood users, and they're going to register a website like robin.hood or some URL that looks like it's a legitimate Robinhood email. Mm-hmm. And they're going to send them what looks to be a very real email tricking them into clicking on any link in the email. And it could be, you need to reset your password. You spend 6 months, and for your protection, you need to click this link to update your password. And because, just for security reasons, we do this every 6 months. Go ahead and click here to update. And they're going to click there, and they're going to update their password and bye-bye all your money. So you got to be very careful about these things, that now that they know that you're a Robinhood user, they can try to trick you into giving up your info. So then, yeah.
I was just going to say, for anyone who uses things like Robinhood, Trading 212, those kind of things, free share and whatnot, and hasn't got two-factor authentication switched on, just go ahead, close your laptop, unplug the internet, and go live as a hermit, because you shouldn't be using the internet and you shouldn't be using these platforms.
Does that even allow for you to not have two-factor authentication? I'm pretty sure that they've turned that on across the board.
No, believe it or not, it's not. I use
mean,
Robinhood, and
why doesn't Robinhood allow for YubiKey? That's my question.
yeah, they should. That will
You,
become the
you,
standard. Yeah.
Yeah, you should be aware this with two-factor authentication is no fail-safe in any way. We have had a phishing scheme running in Sweden with the Swedish bank Nordea, where they actually have this two-factor. You actually need to pick up your mobile app and use the bank ID to authenticate you. And what they have done, they don't go to this page now. Nordea is a Swedish company, but if you misspell it and put Nordea with two A's, .se on there, just a simple miss, you will end up on a phishing site that is the most elaborate scheme I've seen so far, and we are really, really upset with it not taking it down. The thing is, if you go to that page, sometimes it's just the advertisement or an empty page, but sometimes when you come there, you come to a page that is very, very similar to Nordea. Actually, it's a copy. And when you enter your login information, they start up a headless browser in the background that actually uses your credentials to log into the real Nordea site, and you get a ping in your phone that you need to authenticate by bank ID, and you do so, and you will see a cached version of what is happening in the background. And after just a few seconds, you will get a new authentication request from Nordea saying that the session has expired, and you get a new one. And what is happening in the background there is that they are taking all your money. And this is a site that has been operational for more than 1 year, and we have done everything we can to get it removed, but it is still there. You undone.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thanks for that, Johan.
Well, cell phone authentication isn't really the best anyway as far as security.
Right. Very true. Yeah, SMS is the least. Better is a authenticator app, and then better yet is hardware which is YubiKey and all of that. And yeah, people get a false sense of security around SMS two-factor authentication, because as Johan's saying, if you're a really persistent, you can find ways around that. So,
Tyler, I will tell you your audio is still a little off.
Okay,
It's
I need to be
usual.
louder.
It just sounds like more echo, like it's echoing.
Yeah, there's an echo in your background for sure.
He's sitting in a cupboard, so yeah.
Yeah, I'm sitting in a like a phone booth.
In a tent?
Or maybe if I
think
No,
your-
10 would be
your
better.
voice
At
is
least
a
it would
little-
absorb the sound.
Your voice is a
Anyway,
little
in the
deeper.
meantime, PTR to see the Subway sandwich.
But I think this is shame on Robinhood. I mean, Robinhood has had a couple of blunders this year. This is the latest one. So I'm not sure I would be a Robinhood customer.
Have you
I
been?
think from the first blunder, people should have known not to join their platform. They've not done anything right, and they're reactionary at best.
So, with that said, which platform is there one that you would recommend that you see is doing a better job?
Well, there's trade-offs.
They're all crap.
Yeah, TD Ameritrade. I mean, they are all crap, but some of them have been in the game a bit longer. TD Ameritrade, E-Trade. I would stick to those. I wouldn't do Robinhood. I don't even do Cash App.
I mean, Robinhood has pluses, and the interface is beautiful. It's simple, it's elegant. So there's definitely pluses. That's why they have so many customers. But interactive brokers might be one to look at.
That's the one for sure. That is for security. Interactive brokers all day long. They have the worst interface. Robinhood has the best interface, but perhaps the least security. They're a startup. Doing security is the hardest part of doing that startup. So it's they're going to start. They're going to have bruises and bumps, as many startups do.
Also, from an infrastructure perspective, taking those things into account can introduce friction. Like, they want to move quickly, they want to release features quickly, they want the UI to be smooth and buttery, they want to give you as many features for as little amount of man hours as possible. When you have to stop every time and say, right, how are we storing this? How are we normalizing this? How's the data going to be accessed? Do we need to set up Bastion interims into order, for the access for the data, those kind of things? It slows it all down. They don't want to do that because they want to push and move fast and be super slick.
So the next story, shall we, is number 2. Netflix for iOS is rolling out what they call Kids Clips, a TikTok-like feature that shows new daily short videos from its children's library company to test Kids Clips on iOS in the US and other countries. Feature is similar to something called Fast Laughs Comedy. And indeed, they want to get into the TikTok game of short clips. But we kind of already knew that, but this is a little bit different in that it's kids content, short little, almost YouTube-y content called Kids Clips.
Hey Tyler, I
Yeah.
tweeted something out to Tech News that's directly related to this as a
Okay.
story. And like I can't look at it at the same time I'm talking to you right now,
Okay.
so I forgot where it's from. It's from some. Actually, I think it's from sort of
I
some
got it.
sports
See it right here.
publication.
I got
Yeah,
it.
you know what I'm saying. Okay, yeah.
It's right here. I'm going to retweet it right now for everyone who's at the Twitter account. Hopefully Cheryl can, or actually I can pin it to the top. Give me 2 seconds. Here it comes. Let's hope it gets accepted here. And there it is. Oh, hold on, that's the tweet link. Let me give you the actual link to the actual
Tyler,
article.
you are a bit soft again.
Okay, what if I talk louder?
Okay, you can. Do you increase your volume by 1 notch?
Do you have a headset on, Tyler?
I don't.
Okay, this is your maximum volume.
No, this is quite low. I'll turn it up a little bit. Hold on.
I think I'm the only one here who thinks this is perfect volume, Tyler.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's perfectly fine.
Okay, here we go. So the article that Ken found that is now pinned to the top of the room and tweeted to the Twitter account says Apple complicates Netflix gaming push because Netflix is traditionally based on videos. And Netflix, as you know, if you join us every day, is going big into video games in a very big way, as they should. It's a brilliant move for them to do. And the headline is Apple's making that difficult for them, which is not surprising. Netflix is starting to produce its own video games as an additional offering for its subscribers at no extra charge. Apple's App Store rules complicate the picture, and I could have predicted that the second part of that. Netflix gaming ambitions could be slowed by another tech giant, which is Apple. The leading video streaming company has been developing games as a way to attract and retain customers. Releasing titles for Android earlier this month, the games are offered free to the company's subscribers, who numbered 213.6 million as of September 30th. However, Apple retained its right to keep other game stores out of its App Store in its court battle with Epic Games, preventing Netflix and others from offering an easy-to-use platform for mobile iOS users. Apple also doesn't allow third parties to offer gaming platforms on its App Store, blocking products like Xbox Cloud Gaming, NVIDIA GeForce Now, and Google Stadia from appearing in their fully realized form on iPhones and iPads. The Apple App Store generates $19 billion in annual revenue, most of which comes from its 30% developer fee on in-app purchases inside free-to-play games. The number of iPhone users topped 1 billion in January, according to Apple. Apple has also been trying to move into Netflix domain, but lags far behind. Apple TV had under 20 million subscribers as of July, compared to Jesus. So Netflix has 10 times what Apple TV does.
And more importantly, Tyler, Netflix subscribers all pay for that. Apple has a lot of programs where they give you so many free months to induce subscriptions, and so you don't know how many people on the subscriber number are actually not even paying.
Mm-hmm. So Netflix plans to release games individually on the App Store, allowing users to launch but not play them from the Netflix app. Okay, thank you for that, Ken. But that could backfire on Apple. These kinds of behaviors, I believe, the kind of tough behaviors like this, are going to potentially bite them in the ass. And I think they even know that. Google seems to know that. And we've been reading headlines lately where it seems Google's softening its touch with how it's dealing with all of the apps in the app stores. Apple better be careful, or they're going to find themselves getting their wrist slapped rather sternly, as has already happened in Korea, for example. So, the next headline, and thank you for that, Ken, is that Samsung unveils a 14 nanometer, 16 gigabyte memory chip for mobile devices, claims data transfer speeds of 8.5 gigabytes per second, which is 1.3 times faster than their previous chip, and consumes 20% less power. So faster with less power, which is great. Longer battery life and all that jazz. So the next one's from CNN about the United States charging a Ukrainian suspect arrested in Poland and a Russian citizen over the REvil attacks, and says it seized $6 million in ransom payments. So check this out. These are the hackers behind the Kaseya incidents, which Johan will remember was responsible for the shutdown of the Swedish supermarkets about a month ago. So, law enforcement officials seized an estimated $6 million in ransom payments, and federal prosecutors charged a suspect from Ukraine over a damaging July ransomware attack on an American company in a breakthrough for the Biden administration pursuit of cyber criminals, the Justice Department announced Monday. Yaroslav Vasinski, a Ukrainian national who was arrested in Poland, is accused of deploying ransomware known as REvil, which has been used in hacks that have cost the U.S. firms millions of dollars. He conducted a ransomware attack over the 4th of July weekend on Florida-based software firm Kaseya that infected up to 1,500 businesses around the world, according to the indictment unsealed yesterday, which this was partly what led to the Swedish supermarkets all going offline. And he and another alleged REvil operative, a Russian national named Yevgeny Polyanin, are charged with conspiracy to commit fraud and conspiracy to commit money laundering, among other charges. As part of the investigation, authorities seized at least $6 million in funds allegedly linked to the ransom payments received by the Russian Polyanin, officials said. Note who had the money. That tells you who the brains and the boss was. And by the way, Polyanin is still on the loose, where the Ukrainian has been caught in Poland. Again, gives you a little more of an indication of who the boss is. The CNN was first to report on the law enforcement actions before the Justice Department announcement. The law enforcement bust is one of the most impactful actions yet in the Biden administration's multi-pronged fight against ransomware, which accelerated after the series of hacks hampered U.S. critical infrastructure firms this year. While some ransomware groups have continued to breach U.S. companies and demand payments, others have gone quiet in the months. The other interesting point is the amount of attacks that they've done cumulatively. It's been unbelievable. So REvil has been deployed on about 175,000 computers worldwide, with at least $200 million paid in ransoms. Which, by the way, in the Ukraine, you could retire on about $2 million for the rest of your life. So $200 million. Living in the Ukraine is about 1/5 to 1/6 the cost of living in California, for example. It's incredibly, mind-blowingly cheap to live in the Ukraine. So, I mean, money goes just so much further there. So, I mean, $200 million is, the equivalent of $1 billion. from their perspective anyway. But it's amazing that they have names and have, are really starting to push back quite strongly, winning
Would go to the closet and cut off the cable.
Yeah. So next up.
Oh, Tyler.
Yes.
Okay, great. Because we lost you a bit just now.
Okay. So another related headline is the same story but a different twist. That Europol has arrested 7 people suspected of helping REvil with over 7,000 cyber attacks since 2019. So let's check out this one. And there's a photo where they're in the dude's apartment with his laptop, tiny little apartment. Europol announced today the arrests of 7 suspects who worked as partners for the major ransomware cartel and have helped carry out more than 7,000 attacks since 2019. The suspects worked part of the REvil ransomware as a service operations, and they're believed to be operated by the same individual. They created ransomware code that they offered to other criminals for rent. And Europol says since 2019, the 7 suspects carried out attacks in which they collectively asked for more than 200 million in ransom payments. So they're cracking down. The next one is that crypto exchange WOO Network closes a $30 million Series A, and Neon Labs, which aims to create an Ethereum-compatible environment on Solana, raises $40 million in a private token sale. And you.com, which is like not me, but you.com, an AI-powered open source search engine. That's cool. An open source search engine? Those are very interesting words to put together.
I'm loving that idea.
Launched in beta with $20 million in funding, led by Salesforce CEO Mark Benioff. And Mark is a good dude and a smart dude, and this is a kind of a strong kind of shot at Google.
Yeah, this is huge.
Yeah. So this says you.com. I gotta say, I like the name for a search engine.
I love this idea. This is such a great idea, especially with everything that's happening with Meta and Facebook and everything. I really feel like it's going to push everybody towards like an open source, decentralized, like social media and search. I think it's really awesome.
Is it centralized servers or is the open source running on a distributed system?
Great question. Here we go. It says you.com, which bills itself as the world's first open source search engine, today announced its public beta launch along with $20 million in funding, led by Salesforce CEO Mark Benioff, and with participation from Breyer Capital, which would be Jim Breyer, who's like one of the biggest, earliest investors in Facebook, Sound Ventures, which is Ashton Kutcher and Guy Oseary, who are very savvy investors, by the way. And you might think Ashton Kutcher is a random, B-list celebrity. I can assure you, in terms of tech investing, he's incredibly savvy and been very successful. Far more successful in tech investing than he ever was as an actor, I can tell you that. Day One Ventures and others. The company says that the funds will be put toward user growth, product, and technology as you.com scales its platform to new users on the public web. As the economy moves forward, it's you.com assertion. It's their assertion that the internet is becoming more centralized and controlled by a few powerful, ill-meaning tech corporations. By contrast, you.com co-founder and CEO Richard Socher claims that the company uses technology to help people live better and more productive lives. Here's the quote. I had the original idea 8.5 years ago, he told VentureBeat via email. Today, there's too much information, and no one has the time to read it, process it, or know what to trust. A single gatekeeper controls the vast majority of the search market, dictating what you see, too many advertisements, and a flood of search engine optimized pages On top of that, 65% of search queries end with a click on another site, which means traffic stays within the Google ecosystem. Founded in 2020 by Socher and Brian McCann, U.com leverages natural language processing, a form of AI, to understand search queries, rank the results, and semantically parse the queries into different languages, including programming languages. The platform summarizes results from across the web and is extensible with built-in search apps so that users can complete tasks without leaving the results page. Here's another quote. The first page of Google can only be modified by paying for advertisements, which is both annoying to users and costly for companies. Our new platform will enable companies to contribute their most useful actual content to that first page, and if the user likes it, they can take an action right then and there. Most companies and partners will prefer this new interface to people's digital lives over the old status quo of Google. They said one more quote. It says, without cutting-edge deep learning, we would have never been able to leapfrog many years of work in the area of NLP. I believe search is the most important application of AI, and especially NLP today. And a U.com user can control the AI through personalization and customization. So I think we should take 2 seconds and point our browsers to you.com and have a little looky-loo.
Just while you're doing that, Tyler, this is exactly the kind of platform where a truly decentralized identity protocol can find its home, can find its birth.
So naturally, the first search anyone's going to do is for their own name. Speaking as somebody who was part of a search engine from the start. And to see results and get the convenience of...
You can upvote and downvote search results. Oh my god, I love it.
Well, you have to add it to your Chrome browser to see results. That's clever. It's a browser extension. Okay, not the most ideal user experience. They trick you into doing the first search, and then if you want the results, you have to install the browser plugin.
I got the results straight
in
away
beta,
in
right?
Firefox.
Okay.
Might be that the plugin is only available for Chrome. That's why you did get the pop-on and not the Firefox dudes.
Uh-huh.
I love the idea of upvoting and downvoting search results because that should have been available long ago. Google just didn't put it in for its own purposes, but it's been available for everybody.
Yeah, it's asking me to add it to my search engine as well.
So it shows cards instead of lines of text.
Yep.
And it's actually, I don't know, a pretty good interface is my opinion, straight off the bat.
Mm-hmm.
I like the interface for sure.
Very cool. And then you can pick between all results or images or videos or news or maps and whatnot. Yeah. Seems very cool. Okay.
So tomorrow's headline will be Google buys you.
I can tell you something about that. Because what Jason and I were doing at Mahalo was a human-powered search engine, and we raised $20 million from Sequoia and Elon Musk and others. And I can tell you, Google got intensely interested in what we were doing from before we even launched.
Oh my God, I so remember this, Tyler.
And
I
I was surprised.
remember this.
Yeah, how keenly focused they were on everything that was happening, and in the end, they strategically rug pulled us, and they just, as soon as it was growing very quickly, 30% month over month, like tremendous growth, and then Google just stepped in and knocked it out. So I don't know that they'll need to acquire it because they have other ways of defanging it without acquiring it. That's just one scenario that they could use.
Sure, they can build it. I mean,
yeah, they could offer it as an option.
They could just offer it as an option if they have to. If they see First, they're going to see if it gets traction.
Right. Yeah, Google would actually prefer that there be a bunch of unsuccessful search engines, kind of like DuckDuckGo and this, so that they can say, look, we're not a monopoly, but in terms of ad revenue, they are, but in terms of like, so they don't necessarily, but they're gonna watch and this incredibly closely. They will pay particular close attention to the fact that there is that up and down voting. I imagine they might start adding that sooner than later, because that's especially if they start hearing that people like that. I can guarantee you they'll start beta testing that very soon and see how their own users
Right.
uh,
Exactly.
feel about that.
Yeah, but there were systems like this before with like dig.com with Kevin Rose, and they were actually
Mhm.
gamed pretty well. So the problem here is the conflict of interest. How do you maintain the authenticity or sovereignty of these votes while also addressing the search results manipulation, which is quite prominent for Google? So it'll be interesting to see what going forward is the right path. I suspect it will have something to do with authenticated users, or kind of like what Quora does. Like, hey, look, Ashton Kutcher, Jack, and Elon all upvoted this result. Don't you want to be cool like them? I suspect it'll be something like.
Well, that's where you're getting to the point where if you add a social friend graph to the upvotes, so what people's upvotes aren't equal, your friends' votes mean more than others, where in Reddit that isn't really the case. Kind of all upvotes or downvotes are kind of equal regardless of who your relation to those people, I assume.
I
I
mean,
just
what
I just ran a search using u.com and then tried another search in the search bar that normally would default to Google Chrome. And it seems like the extension switches the default search engine to u.com because Google then prompted me to switch it back to Google.
That was sneaky. That was really sneaky.
regarding the upvoting and whatnot, I mean, what you're describing is Google SEO. That's the whole framework. That's it guides all of the W3 content and how people build sites and everything else. They already do all of this. They just don't trust humans to press a button. I mean, I'm teaching you how to suck eggs here, Tyler, because you already know all this. But it's done automatically. It's done already. It's they know what you click on. They know where you scroll to. They know when you go to the site that you clicked on because of Google Analytics. They know where you go from there. Down that engagement funnel, how far you go down that funnel. They already do all of this. They just do it in a better way, I would say.
Yeah, but the sneaky part here was that they replaced your default search engine without prompting you, I guess. I'm driving my car, so I haven't tried you on the computer yet. But if they did do that in the background, they are no better than these really, really bad search engine that was doing that all the time before. I would say, I would recommend them to not force that upon people. Give them the choice, because it will bite you so hard in the ass when you force people to use their search engine in that way. Doing it in stealth, that's a really, really bad idea. You end up.
It says some of the web, image, and video results are powered by Microsoft, and the privacy statement is a Microsoft privacy statement. So it seems at the bottom.
You just got
That's
binged.
can it be Bing in the background of
It's
that one?
literally Bing. Oh my god, I love
Oh no, it's a shell on Bing.
it.
They
Hmm.
finally found a use for Bing.
I have
Bing
to say,
ball.
I love Bing for two reasons. One, their organic search results are better. And number two, I don't have to type in Google because it's too many letters. So I could just type in Bing and it's shorter. That's okay. Thanks.
I just like the pictures. They have the photos when you sign on.
Google
Oh,
doesn't have
same.
any organic results anymore.
Duck,
They're
duck,
all
go.
Okay. Let's.
The UI
Cozy
is
up.
the UI is interesting. The card thing, it works quite well. If you type in something that's not you, but you type in something quite broad, say Tyler, put in the water stress map, for example. Because of the way it highlights the results, you get quite an interesting spread of things quite quickly. So the amount of information you get available for you to dive into as you scroll through in terms of different places is way broader than the way Google does the UI, where it's just this big monolithic list, top to bottom. So that's really interesting. Obviously that's easily pinchable, but
But the
the
thing
UI
is,
is cool.
yeah, but the thing is here that if to use a search engine, you want to have a depth in your search. You want to have the largest pool of information to actually refine it out. And if they are choosing to build this on Bing instead of trying to build an own, well, then they are screwed, because Bing is only indexing 12% of the web pages on the internet. Google is up to 22 now. So yeah, sorry.
Well, the hope is that just like that time when Google and Bing were kind of very heated in um, their search competitiveness, it turned out that Bing was actually copying Google search results. So I hope that the knowledge graph at least will grow sufficiently large. But I've never had success on Bing searching anything, even academic technical papers. It's always been a disaster. I suspect there is a lot of legacy structure that goes along with getting good search results, kind of like, hey, my IP address, the history of the things that I've searched, all factor into how easy it is to pull up search results for the things that I'm interested in. So I suspect that's something that's not addressed, at least with new, current, up and coming search engines.
And
I'm also
let's be real here, like Bing and Google talk to one another. They literally directly correlate to one another because Bing has a new feature called Clarity, and Clarity needs to be connected to what? Google Analytics. So they literally talk to one another now. It's kind of ridiculous. So that's why I like the u.com, but then it's Bing anyway. So, oy vey.
Well, you think about it this way now. They have this option for you to, like something or not like something or whatever, bring it further up to the top. So now it's just going to start collecting this data on what you've selected as more relevant and less relevant, and then it's just going to start showing you things that they would think you would find more relevant. So that
What I
option
want is
might actually not be around in the future. It might just be for now, just so they can push the algorithm forward. You know what I mean?
It's the
Like,
gamification of search engine like search engine results. Oh my lord.
I mean, it's like
but
the
that
YouTube. It's like
sucks
what's
because
happening
I
with
just
YouTube, right? Like you go to a video and they're like, oh well, most people like this video after this video, so now we're going to show you this video. And it's the same concept. Like, oh, okay, if I'm going to say that this article makes more sense to me than something else, then it's going to show me things that other people have said that too as well.
Yeah, but the problem here is that
all
the
I
data
want is
pool that
good
Bing
search
has is so
results.
a lot less than the Google. So even if it shows you the next that people have been interested of before, it is from a smaller pond of information. So you won't find the things that you will have with the same algorithm running against Google's or all the web's pools. So yeah, sorry. Good attempt. Good attempt. Good game.
Okay, next article is from the Washington Post that ex-Israeli soldiers say that Israel built a Facebook for Palestinians over the last 2 years to monitor Palestinians through facial recognition tech. The Israeli military has been conducting a broad surveillance effort in the occupied West Bank. Israel escalates surveillance of Palestinians with facial recognition program in the West Bank. And the article says, from the Washington Post, the Israeli military has been conducting a broad surveillance effort in the occupied West Bank to monitor Palestinians by integrating facial recognition with a growing network of cameras and smartphones. According to descriptions of the program by recent Israeli soldiers, the surveillance initiative, rolled out over the past 2 years, involves in part a smartphone technology called Blue Wolf that captures photos of Palestinians' faces and matches them to a database of images so extensive that one former soldier described it as the Army's secret Facebook for Palestinians. The phone app flashes in different colors to alert soldiers if a person is to be detained, arrested, or left alone. To build the database, soldiers completed last year in photographing Palestinians, including children and the elderly, with prizes for the most pictures collected by each unit. The total number of people photographed is unclear, but at a minimum ran well into the thousands. The surveillance program was described in interviews conducted by the Washington Post with two former Israeli soldiers, and in separate accounts that they and four others recently discharged soldiers gave to the Israeli advocacy group called Breaking the Silence and were later shared with the Post. Much of the program has not been previously reported. Well, it hasn't been reported because it isn't really news, by the way. While the Israeli military has acknowledged the existence of the initiative in an online brochure, right, and that's how you know it's not news. You're trying to make out like you just found some interesting thing when they themselves have it as public information. By the way, I can assure you every Palestinian knows goddamn well this has happened, and far more. There's far more crazier shit going on than this.
Yeah, a friend of mine who's a Palestinian who I guess lived in Israel, he said that traveling just between city blocks because of the amount of barricades, he would be harassed on a regular basis because of how secure and tense everything is, that it really affected the quality of life so much that he left that region. He said that it wasn't possible to have a normal life with a normal family because everything was so high stakes to the edge. So I hope that at least going forward, these kind of technologies would help reduce that kind of stress, but they just seem to add to it, unfortunately.
So we've covered rather extensively how America has Clearview AI, Russia has PIM eyes, China has SenseTime, Israel has their own facial recognition company, AnyVision, as I recall it was called, which competes very directly with the others. They all compete with each other to get customers, which are oftentimes governments. And so the idea that Israel has its own facial recognition system and not using it on Palestinians would be an absurd thought. That would be the first place they would use it. So this is, like I said, not news, and they would be very public about saying it. And like I said, the cameras in this article, if Cheryl's pinned it and to the top, then you'll see when you click on the article, the first thing you see is the title, and then underneath the title is a photo. And in the photo, it shows a pole with two cameras on it that clearly are very advanced cameras. Standing next to it is a Palestinian man with a shirt that says Palestine, like a soccer jersey, and he's standing next to those cameras. I would bet everything I have that he knows those cameras are doing facial recognition on them. And so, hence, this article is not by any stretch. This is the most, sky is blue, water is wet headline I can think of. There's
And Tyler, I did some research because we discussed this at the previous
yeah,
whatever the
yeah,
previous.
8 hour, yeah, in our previous meeting.
My best guess is the person who wrote this article, from her LinkedIn profile picture, some what's there. She's probably maybe 25 years old, and she, I think it's from The Verge, isn't it, or something? The article.
Washington Post, but I want to see her.
Oh, that's the Washington Post.
I want to see her
Oh, this was a
Twitter
different one.
account. Hold on, let's check it out on her Twitter account, and I want to see if she's also talked about. I want to see if you're right. I just did a search and it forced me to go to you.com and Google saying, "Do you want to go back to Google?" Because of the browser extension, kind of forces you to start using you as your
Because
default
you,
search.
you spoke about this the extensively also in the other room, and about why did somebody write this, because it's like so obvious or something. I think this was the story, and
Yeah,
I think the person who wrote it's like
yeah. She
the
looks young.
first
Yeah,
time journalist.
I'm looking at her
Yeah,
Twitter account, and what I want to get a sense of is she talking also about um, facial recognition in other contexts, like other tweets that she might have about facial recognition. I would be surprised if she hasn't. It seems like the issue
well,
is, yeah, go ahead.
yeah, the question that I would ask is, how does this affect the quality of life of everyday individuals? In general, when we think of surveillance, it's that you are supposed to be unaware that it's happening. It's not
Oh,
supposed to
check
affect
it
or
out.
stop your
Hold on.
travel. So
Hang
if
on,
that is the case, I think
hang
maybe
on,
that's the purpose of the article.
hold on. Today's November 9th. On November 2nd, she wrote about Facebook is ending facial recognition because it's too controversial. But it's so, again, less than a week ago, she wrote another article about facial recognition, claiming that they're ending facial recognition because it's too controversial. I am starting to get, my assumption seems to be correct. She wants to create the narrative that facial recognition is very controversial. And that's why she's writing an article that Israel's using it against Palestinians, because she wants to create the narrative that facial recognition is controversial.
And I would say it's the least friction-based way of securing a state. We want it to be invisible. So for it to be visible, like what's the alternative? If we go back in time, it's a lot of harassment, a lot of shouting, yelling. So I would think that at least from an applications
And a
perspective,
border
she would
wall.
have asked. So yeah, I would
If
have asked if she had. Sorry, go ahead.
and a border wall. If we use facial recognition, we know who belongs.
So, yeah, why Elizabeth? What's her by writing an article about facial recognition in a way that we know it's already being used? Oh! Here's another article, October 24th. So about 2 weeks ago, about license plate scanners. We're supposed to bring peace of mind, but it's tearing apart a town in Colorado. So now 2 articles in 2 weeks about a license plate scanner in a neighborhood. I'm starting to sense a bit of a narrative here, Miss Elizabeth. And
No, you know what happens is a reporter writes one article and then starts getting tips on related stuff from people who've read that
sure,
article. And
yeah,
suddenly that becomes her beat. She could or could not have an idea for a narrative, but now she will because
yeah,
she's been given all the info.
yeah. Okay. So, but interestingly, there was headlines in the past 2 weeks that schools in the UK are using facial recognition for students to pay for their lunches. Russia's using it for every Russian person in Moscow, with millions of people, to use the metro without having to bother with, you taking something out of their wallet to walk through the metro. Interestingly, didn't cover those stories. So, other articles here. Next one up is Niantic, which is the parent company of Pokemon Go, has now built a platform to create real-world metaverse experiences and AR, augmented reality, on mobile devices, Apple and Google phones, smartphones, and inside of iOS and Android apps, and commits $20 million to fund companies building augmented reality apps on their brand new real-world metaverse platform called Lightship. So they are now entering the race with Facebook, or Meta, and Unity, who is a major gaming platform where people can create metaverse-like experiences instead of a video game, which those two worlds are blurring and merging as we speak. And we could also add in Epic Games, also has a platform for precisely that. But Niantic is pushing ahead.
My first question, if I
Mhm.
wanted to implement this,
Best.
Tyler, would
Yeah,
be.
I'm going to be back in 2 minutes. Keep going, Carl.
Oh, yep, yeah, okay, and I interrupted somebody there. I do apologise. I'll make it quick. My first thought is, if I was implementing this, is there an included store? Is there an inventory system for like things like NFTs and collectibles and items and that kind of thing? Is there a way to buy things and trade things and sell things and et cetera, and et cetera? And then how does that play into what
Peanut.
we've been talking about in regards to the Apple's
I do my
restriction
event now. Look.
on purchases and sales and everything else and
I
microtransaction
miss
monitoring.
you. I say good night. Okay. I
There
want
was
kiss.
I'm not sure if it's that
Big
article.
one.
It might be that one. But there was another interview last night with a quote from the guy from Niantic, and he was sort of pointing to the
Love you.
Facebooks and many of the other
You have a good day
metaverse
today?
things as being, his words, like dystopian.
You miss
Because,
Papa
and
today?
their Niantic being
You
different
miss Papa
because
today?
Niantic products, while digital, are all about human
Where's Mama? I want
interaction in
to
the
see
real
Mama.
world. So he was sort of suggesting that the thing they were building was
Mama!
different because of the real world connection and would be more
Okay,
like
you
as a
look good. Choop
philosophical
choop.
thing.
And they definitely aren't collecting a shit ton of data from all of their users and
100%.
pictures and location data and like,
I finished about 1
really.
hour later.
I know, yeah, it was
To
quite
be
funny. It
sold
did
to the
make me laugh.
highest
Okay.
bidder.
Not only that, but do you know that Niantic was a spin out from
Everything okay with
Google?
the man in the beach house?
Did not. I explain that.
You
I
can
read
send me
that
his phone
last
number
night.
so I can make
The
WhatsApp
guys
group.
from Niantic were a spin off from an experiment in Google. And so they have, probably Google's intellectual property somewhere in their heads about augmented
Yeah,
Okay.
reality and
Okay.
artificial.
Okay.
yeah, it was a start within Google. So, I mean, at the very least, I mean, you guess Google Maps is buried in there somewhere.
I mean, I
Okay.
suppose this is awesome, and there's a place
Mm-hmm.
right now for VR and AR and like MR. But I mean,
Bye-bye.
ultimately, this is doomed to fail, right? This is something to be replaced. That is, from what I can see in the article, they are extending out what they built with their AR capabilities inside Pokemon Go. And enabling sort of like a platform for others to use. But that's like, if you've got to hold your phone up and use the camera and then look at the screen to experience the augmented reality, that experience is always going to be supplanted by something else. Like it's in the long run, it's doomed to be replaced and doomed to fail by heads-up versions of it and full VR, right?
Ken,
Yeah,
I
as for
saw
like
you just jump on
HoloLens,
stage and you're from the game industry. You have anything to chime in? Mr. Ken White? If not, sorry, I interrupted who just now? Was it IO?
yeah, I was just going to say that the HoloLens, for example, Microsoft HoloLens, the spatial computing capabilities of that allows characters to be in the environment, although they're not quite stable in the sense that, when you look at a Microsoft video trailer for the HoloLens, it looks really slick and smooth. In actuality, it's a little bumpy and a little bit of bouncing around and stuff. So the technology is coming along, although the HoloLens is $3,000 to $5,000 and a smartphone is perhaps under $1,000. So it'll be interesting to see how quickly that technology converges into, the smart glasses that we're all eagerly anticipating.
Yeah, I was going to say I think that's where the development is going to head to. But they have a great platform
They're going back to
to base
Google
from.
Glass.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just see that if Facebook manages to continue down this whole, so like the Ray-Ban and the smart glasses and everything else, which they've openly said they are, this is what they want to do, then things like this are just going to die. Like this, if you can have it on your face and you can get that seamless integration and then maybe use the sort of the myoelectric band on your wrist to control it or, that kind of thing, then this can't hold a candle to that, right? I'm not going to pull my phone out and turn on the camera and hold my phone up in the air and knacker my arm out and look at the screen when I can just have it on my face.
And not when you can have an
I would
immersive
disagree.
interaction.
I'm on my way to the Augmented World Expo right now, and I would say 90% of stuff I'm going to see is going to be on iPads and phones, because right now we're in the middle of a pandemic. I'm not sure if you've heard, and people don't want to share devices on their face. In
Exactly.
addition, I would also say glasses have never been cool. I wear glasses, but guess what? Buddy Holly was never the most attractive man in the world. People don't like wearing glasses. They're not comfortable. They're not attractive. And I think people are still going to be very reliant on their phones because of the ease of use and because they don't want to get a brain tumor. This is Kevin, and I'm on my way to Awe right now. I'll be there the next 3 days, so if you want any updates, follow me on the gram.
That's a very interesting point that you made, and I was in a meeting the other week, just last week, talking about that, just how what would the adoption rate be of people wearing glasses, especially clear glasses, right? Which is why Facebook has the combination with Ray-Bans, right? So it's the people like glasses when they're cool, and the stamp would be luxury. So I wonder if Luxottica, and Facebook and all of these other companies, especially that with Gucci being in the metaverse and Balenciaga and stuff like that, creating glasses or glasses skins or glasses frames with Facebook or whatever company has the best AR or VR. And yeah, people walking around with those for around their face because they need the status symbol of saying I'm not just wearing any type of VR glasses. I'm wearing, Louis Vuitton glasses or Gucci glasses.
I think the other part of this too is if you could imagine if we go towards autonomous vehicles, you may not even see windshield on the car. It may be a see-through lens that displays whatever the camera is picking up and whatever services that are provided in those areas. So you can imagine just traveling in your own car, seeing the augmented reality coming through the screen of your windshields. That technology is being worked on right now.
Yeah, just on that again, like really quickly, just on the UX of that, creating those type of heads-up displays, especially with because there's going to be need for new laws and new driving rules when you have a blackout window or people think they can actually watch a movie while they're driving, right? Because there's need for the driver to be concentrating so as much within the next 10 years at least, if people are using autonomous driving. So there's going to be a lot of like shifts within people's paradigms on how they are sitting in the driver's seat and what they could possibly be watching.
Okay, so there's a related article that Dr. Fran found from Wired, and the headline reads, AR is where the real metaverse is going to happen. Facebook might aim to build an all-immersive digital matrix, but Niantic CEO John Hanke, it tells us that what he plans to do is take reality and make it better. And I have to say that from what I can tell about Apple, it seems Apple's far more interested in augmented reality than virtual reality. It's just a hunch, but a hunch based on kind of an educated hunch. And it seems Niantic...
Yet they also sell...
Yep.
I was going to say they sell Insta360 cameras in their stores, which doesn't work as AR, it only works in VR. So they are looking at those numbers of how people are using VR to capture personal memories and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
This is why I feel like the metaverse is going to be more than just one unit. There's going to have to be more players. I don't think that completely immersive technology is going to be everybody's cup of tea. I think the applications for AR are just as relevant and just as prevalent for those who want to continue to live in the real world. And I think it just heightens it. And I reckon this back to, back in the day when you went to Google Maps, it's actually the reversal. If you go to Google Maps, everything was in the, flat cartoon-like drawings of the cities and the places that you were. But then eventually you could go and see a real picture. And I think that what is about to happen is the exact opposite, where in real life you're going to start seeing these cartoon animations and stuff that pop up in your real world experience. And that's going to be just as fascinating. So I don't think it necessarily has to completely be immersive. You don't have to put on and hide from the real world. I think the advantage of AR tools is going to be just as profitable.
Yeah, what I'm really interested in, just on the creator side, is when the Blender adoption rate. I've just been researching and working with Blender. Like I use Maya usually, but I'm checking out Blender now just because a lot more people are using Blender for these like commercial use, right? And I see a quick, at least, adoption in the event space. So if artists have like a show going on, or live shows like Tyler's, where there's an augmented reality version where you can actually see whatever ads are there, or whatever movie somebody wants to see, and it's 3D and it comes at you, or all of these other things that you can do with these 3D and AR technologies.
Okay, so next headlines here. Next one up is that Clubhouse rolls out replay on iOS and Android, letting users record live rooms and share them as a podcast or a clip on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. Clubhouse hosts and moderators will have a fresh tool in their kit today. The company's pushing a new feature live on both iOS and Android. That's from folks on Clubhouse Replay.
Yeah, I was in the room when great. So they have decided not to use it because it's not worth it. That's what they said. But I guess for usual speakers, I guess it's not much of a difference. You can use it if you like.
The thing that I'm most surprised about is the fact that you have the ability to skip between speakers. That you can fast forward to the next speaker, which says a lot about their storage techniques, like under the hood, because I would have assumed that they just record the bulk audio. But actually, if they're able to do this, it's much more likely that they're recording the independent audio streams from each person. And then they are indexing when that person is speaking. And then they actually, because if I don't know how many people have actually listened to a recording, it runs on your phone as if you are in a room. As in, all the features and the functionality is the same as if you are currently in the room. It's not like it just sends you an audio file. It sends through like the whole object of the event itself. And then you can do most of what you could do normally when you're in a room. So that opens up windows for a lot of really cool stuff. I mean, maybe at some point in the future, as a person, you'll be able to download your audio repository, which has all of the clips of just you speaking. I don't know why people would want to do that, but it's possible.
Carl, that's
Totally.
such a good point. Oh my days! Like literally, just so quick, BB. One thing that I've always wondered is that even when your mic is off mute on the stage, is Clubhouse still recording, right? So is Clubhouse always recording your mic? And when you come on stage, the mic switches. So I don't know whether people heard that little blip in between when your audio is off and on as soon as you come on stage, but the way the sound on your phone is when you're, let's say, listening to a podcast, it switches for when you're actually speaking on stage. So I wonder if even without all of the mics on stage, that is Clubhouse recording. So it's probably indexing everything that's happening around you and whatever your mic can pick up regardless. But yeah, BB.
I mean,
I
when
think
you
it
do the clips, you see how they switch the avatar in the middle. So I think they use the same technology to index all the video. And in the town hall, they say it's an MP3 file. So I'm not sure they will provide you the whole video. It's not.
yeah, I agree.
The
I think it's very data intensive for them to record all the audio, and it would be invasive if they record the audio with your mic on mute. I don't think that's happening. But that would also explain why it's only like 15-second clips, right? So it's not like the whole hour-long talk, because again, that's a lot of data for a relatively new tech.
Okay, so just to clarify the little that I know, and having a look through not Club Decks, but another repository that has backwards engineered some of the API endpoints and everything else. As far as I'm aware, when you come up on stage, your microphone is activated. So the app itself has access to the microphone, but nothing is streamed until you unmic. So they could, if they wanted to, do some on-device passing of what you were saying, for instance. I don't think they are, and then collect metadata about that and then send that back. But the actual audio isn't sent back to the servers until you unmic.
I want to see if my friend Jeremiah, who's brilliant at anticipating how features can turn into businesses and use cases for enterprise and things like that. He's an absolute wizard at that stuff. So I saw him in the audience a bit ago, and I don't know if he...
Hey, I'm here.
Oh, you're here. Great.
He's on stage.
I love how your brain works when it comes to features like this, and how you think your friends, which is kind of all of the enterprise power users, how this might appeal, um, the recording and skipping through from speaker to speaker, how that could work into one example.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No, thank you. And hello, everybody. I do think there's an opportunity to turn these into podcasts or create some type of new streams. There's actually a podcast 3.0, I think this is the best way to say it, that's emerging, where they're taking content and allowing it to be remixed, and some of it's on blockchain or being turned into NFTs. So it's possible that all these little clips could be assembled into a new form of a digest. And imagine the best of Clubhouse every day is done dynamically through some apps that create that. I don't know if the Clubhouse team has the vision for that, but certainly third-party developers could do that. And so if you can't spend, your time listening, for 8, 10, 12 hours a day, imagine a 30-minute clip that was generated and based upon the amount of reactions in the room or number of people in the room or who was speaking,
Genius.
number of followers, we could turn this into a new form. Also, I
Genius.
did
Hold on. I want to unpack that so the slow kids in class can come up to speed, because
oh
that's
no, I'm
brilliant.
slow too.
No. So check this out. So you're exactly right. If there was a magical way to get a daily summary of all of the best content out of Clubhouse each day, and it would be whatever the speakers in across all of the rooms said, they got the most reactions, meaning mic clapping applauses, or at that moment they got a whole bunch of followers, for example, when they said something, or people checking their bio, or some type of action that revealed that they had done something, said something of significance, and then snip those together into a new form of a digest, as you said. That's totally brilliant. What a wild use case.
Yeah, thanks. There's another idea. So I did do a sponsored Clubhouse room. I was sponsored by Cisco, and we crudely recorded the room, which they were trying to glue together for a podcast. But the quality is wasn't great at the time, not on their end, but because of Clubhouse. And so, just being able to record a longer form, I realized their clips, could result in a new set of inventory for Clubhouse to generate, revenue or advertising.
Well,
Go ahead.
yeah, I love that they add the visual element, so you see the speakers. It's not just audio. It's
Yep.
also in vertical mode, portrait mode, so you can export it to TikTok and Snapchat and Instagram, in those apps that run more portrait-like instead of horizontally, which is more. YouTube seems to be kind of uniquely the only horizontal, although even they're trying to accommodate portrait mode, vertical mode. So it makes it really easy to get broader distribution of your content that you're creating in this app into those other social network apps. And if you want to, you can't just put audio into TikTok. You kind of need the video to go along with it. So it makes it very simple to tease up, like what we do in Tech News Around the World. And we go on for 2 hours each session twice a day. We can now cherry pick, scoot up to, the kind of sweet spots, and export it into TikTok and Snapchat, and make those 2-minute little hit pieces that could then drive traffic back into, Tech News Around the World site. And in that sense, it's all very brilliant, I think.
It's surprising because
Question.
Paul was very resistant to recording.
Yep, I have a question. Who owns the copyright? The creator or Clubhouse?
He says the creators in the town hall.
Everything that I know about the ownership is the person that makes the room, right? I don't know whether they say anything about an individual speaker owning their own right to record their voice, but I know that if you create the room, you're allowed to record the room, but obviously, unless you got explicit permission, then you don't necessarily own the clips of audio, whether you're on stage or not. So I don't know how that mixes up.
Creator means Tyler, right, in our case?
Well, what I'm hoping is,
That's
Cheryl, because I'm not using the mobile app, and you're using the mobile app, right? You're not using Club Deck like I am. Can you?
Yes.
I hope you can
Let me try.
do this. I imagine you have to do it at the beginning of the room. You have to, if you can do
Yep.
it in the middle of the room.
At this point, it shows replace off. So I think by default it's closed because you're on club deck.
So I
It's
need to
off.
turn it
And
on
I
somehow.
It's going to
Tyler,
be when you
Tyler, it
start the
work.
room, almost
Yeah, it
certainly.
works as the clips. You have to open it when
Oh,
you
hold on.
schedule this room because it need to be the public from the beginning. So just like clips, you need to schedule a open room if it's
Yep.
under the club. So if it's
Yes.
personal, you will see a toggle that replace on and off, and you turn it on in from the beginning and ask. The, it works almost as the clips. So if you turn it off, you turn it off. Then you don't have that file.
Okay.
And we,
Tyler,
the users, can see that replays is off on the room. And more importantly,
Yes.
it's cool that when you grab a clip, for example, it tells you how many people are typically in the room and how many people are in the room currently as the recording is being played. So you can play that up as well in multiple use cases.
Well, two things. One, if you've got a system where you've got the recording of the room, you've got where each person is speaking indexed, and then you've got the given room count at that time, where you can say, hey, every time this person speaks, 40 new people keep joining. Or every time speaks in our rooms that's regular, the number keeps dropping by this amount. And the other thing is, I wonder what it's going to do to this like Clubhouse socially itself. Is it going to introduce more accountability? Because you can remove yourself from the recordings, but only if you're in the audience. That's one interesting thing. From what I've seen, there isn't any option where you can say, hey, always hide me from audiences. You have to go to a recording, find a recording, go into the recording, start playing it, then go to the options at the top right, and then say, remove me from the audience for this recording. So that will, that will take you out. As recorded as listening to the room, but as a speaker, you can't remove yourself. So what is this? Is this going to make Clubhouse more accountable? Maybe? Is it going to improve the content? Maybe? I don't know. Tyler, your thoughts on this?
Carl, I think you misunderstood remove me from the audience. When you listen to a replay, then you will see the button on the very button that shows the one who is listening to this room right now. I mean, the replay rooms. So if you mean remove from the audience, then it's when you're listening to that. That means others won't see you listening to this room. It's
Yeah,
not.
yeah.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean if you are in that room previously, you are still recorded under that room.
Yeah, if you're a speaker, yes. If you don't go up on stage and you remain in the audience, you can
No.
retrospectively go to the recording and then remove yourself from being recorded as in that audience. No?
No. That function means when you listening to a replay room, you are not shown in the very button. There are two types of audios. That when you like, if we are recording this room, so if you're in the audience, then you are recorded. Then if you're listening to a replay room, then there is another audience on the very button. And remove audience from the room means you are not showing when you're listening to the replay room. Okay, maybe you can try later. You understand what I'm talking about.
Right, okay, fair enough then. I mean, my final, thank you for the clarification. My final question then, Tyler, like to you and anybody else who mods a lot of rooms, how do you think this is going to affect Clubhouse socially? Like, will it improve content? Will it deter people from coming on and speaking? Because obviously it was always recorded and people could always do recordings unofficially, but now it's baked in. Now we've had clips and replays in a very short period of time be released.
I
Like,
think
what's it going to do?
it will
I
encourage
think
people. It depends because you have not everyone is the same. The narcissists are going to love it more because they're going to get more reach. So if you're in a popular room and you know it's going to be seen in TikTok or on Twitter or wherever, you're even more inspired to hog the mic even more. But if you're a reclusive person, then you like it even less. So it's not a one size fits all thing. It's not going to encourage everyone to act one way or another. It's going to further magnify their existing propensities.
Tyler, may I contribute? This is David.
Go ahead.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, sorry. I would say that there's two types of rooms on Clubhouse. those that are like this that I go to and I listen and I'm open-minded to, in a way that when we lose a loved one, we all are there in an empathetic way. That's authentic. There's no performances here, because people will have at stake their reputations, and they're honorable people. I meet good people in life. I would say, put all of you guys in that love tree. But there's other rooms that are performative, and people are there to be narcissists or to play out their social lives. They tend to be younger, so we all get out of these things different elements. I think that this will, if people are judged on metrics and get elevated and scored, that could be very toxic to free speech in some way. That contributing element to people volunteering their thoughts from the not from the shadows, but from the outside perspective, which I think enlightens this room. And that's all I have to say.
Yeah, can I add something, Tyler?
Of course.
When they introduced clips, my immediate concern was those of us who speak about legal or medical matters and put in our disclaimers, this is not legal advice, this is not medical advice, and this is preliminary data, and this has not been corroborated.
Mm.
All of those disclaimers are deleted when someone takes a
Right.
clip of what you're saying 3 minutes
Right.
later. So to be quite honest, clipping has really diminished my interest in making statements that require disclaimers, because I know that a clip is likely to be done outside of the context of the disclaimer. And I think that's pretty dangerous. So either record everything, record nothing. But we all know that anybody can record anything. And I'm sure there are lots of massive unauthorized recordings that already exist. So I think the clip was a bad idea. I think recording everything and recording nothing is probably the better way to go. And given that you can't prevent somebody from illicitly recording, there probably ought to be a full record that is defensible to defend against clips taken out of context.
Mm-hmm. Great point.
Hey, I just
Haman
wanted
and
to say
I,
very quickly. I just wanted to say John is right, and I dislike clips for the exact reason he just gave. But there's a lot of reasons to dislike clips, and
Sure.
so that's a good job, John. Thanks.
and Haman and I turn off clips in the Karma Club for exactly that reason. However, Haman has also been helping me record the Karma Club discussions because they're very often on important subjects, and we release them. And we simultaneously put them on Twitter and Clubhouse and Callin, and then release them as Spotify podcasts, and on other podcast platforms. So now what this is going to do is make it hugely easier for Heyman, because he's basically been doing all this by hand. And it's like somebody invented this, somebody just invented the sewing machine for him, because it industrializes the process for us who are putting out a podcast anyway. And let me remind you, while I have the floor, that on
Yes.
Thursday we are going to do a room in memory of Chris called Entrepreneurs and Their Health Risks. And I want you all to come if you can, and either participate in the airdrop for the Karma Coin or buy some Karma Coin, which we are going to use to do whatever it is that the Twitter feed that I'm part of has decided should be done to help Regina. So it's 11 o'clock Mountain Time, and it's going to be on health risks of entrepreneurs, because, as I've said several times, Chris is not the first entrepreneur that I have known who died an untimely death.
And Dr. Francine, I've already pinned your room on top of the room. So whoever is interested, please click on the link and then click on the bell to remind yourself when the room starts. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank
Well
you,
done.
Cheryl.
You're
So
welcome.
our dear
Just
friend, hold on one
sorry, go
second,
on,
Paul.
Tyler.
Cal Patel just messaged me to say regarding replays, because he's listening on somewhere. He's always listening, folks. He says, I was able to go to tomorrow's room that you have set up, which I have. If you click on the title of this room, you'll see I've already scheduled for the next meeting of Tech News Around the World. And he says because he's listed as one of the speakers in that room by default, that he was able to go to that room and toggle replays to be on for that room tomorrow. So hopefully people will be able to do that. And Cal, if you're still listening, or Cheryl, if you can, or anyone else, please do get the file, the video file, and please send it to me, because I would love to see it, because I'm hosting via Club Deck.
Only
Wait,
the creator who created the room can have access to the file.
Okay, so maybe I get access to it
yeah.
after the fact, but okay.
Yeah, see, all
So
of those fiddly things is like why I brought up, because there's a lot. Clubhouse hasn't really cleared up the production rights around all of these things, and like just as when Heyman has these more tools to do this, it just elevates his production rate. But quickly, does Cal have a burnout? Because I never saw him in the audience, so
No,
that was funny.
he has other ways of listening. He's got all kinds of ways and means. So
All kinds of ways.
yeah,
He's
Of
been busy
course.
today, so you
so
show at Dr. Francis.
the
Gotta play
what
that X-Files music for that.
yeah, but I love the idea that a replay could be forwarded to a particular point, like a YouTube video, and that could be pinned to the top of the room, so somebody could show, oh, look, here's what was said 5 days ago in either Tech News Around the World or some other room. You see what I'm saying? And we could replay what people said, adding historical context to conversations. I love that idea. So anyway, the next article is from the New York Times, that the global chip shortage has bolstered the influence of lesser-known chip makers like Microchip Technology as market power shifts from buyers to manufacturers. It's now a seller's market, and the smaller players are becoming an important players, because everyone, if you can make chips, you're in business. There's no point being picky anymore. NVIDIA unveils something called Riva Custom Voice, a toolkit which companies can use to create custom human-like voice assistants with only 30 minutes of speech data, meaning a voice print. So if you could somehow magically get 30 minutes of my voice, I don't know how you would ever do that. Maybe some kind of clipping or some kind of clubhouse replay kind of room or something like that. You could go to NVIDIA and use their new Riva Custom Voice Toolkit and create a custom human-like voice assistant, Siri with a lisp, name which you could call Tyler if you want. But that's a wild idea. And now we are one step further to Cammy's inevitable future as a voice celebrity for assistants, digital assistants.
Another thing for narcissists.
Yeah. Well, you could talk to yourself. Fuck Siri. I want to talk to myself.
Yeah, you could be your own virtual digital assistant.
Right. Hey, Tyler, what do we think? What do we want for lunch today?
Tuna
So
sandwich.
Subway.
I had that today, actually. NVIDIA also makes something new called the Omniverse, as if things weren't getting a little crazy already. We've got the metaverse, the universe. Now, the Omniverse, a real-time collaborative design tool generally available, and now allows developers to create hyper-realistic, interactive AI avatars, meaning characters in a metaverse, essentially, that are AI avatars that are interactive, that you can talk with, that are hyper-realistic. So we got to crack these. We got to crack open both of these. And we have a friend from NVIDIA who joins us nearly all the time. And I think I saw her in the audience earlier. So if she might be able to jump on stage, if she is in the audience, I'm looking. Is she here? Anyone see her?
Let me see.
I don't see
Nope.
her. I think she heard
Nope,
the
she's
word
not here.
NVIDIA and bolted.
She run.
So I don't want to talk about it. So, but this article, which if you can pin these, Cheryl, because the images in these give you a really good idea of what this is about.
Yeah, it's
But
pinned.
yeah, very cool. NVIDIA is, it's interesting because NVIDIA is a hardware, mega player with the chips, behind AI.
Graphics chips.
Yeah, graphics chips and specific chips kind of for AI even. And but now they're getting into the software, which is really interesting.
Well, traditionally they have been kind of a two-pronged company where they've built quite amazing tools for developers and specifically researchers with their CUDA line, and they established themselves there with, hey, look, our software is easier. It just works. It does all this sexy stuff with little effort. They've taken the approach that Apple has by minimizing the friction of development. So in a lot of ways, this makes a lot of sense because you still need the GPU to run these things, and you need the NVIDIA GPU with their special binaries and so on. So it's an exciting opportunity, especially because the Omniverse platform itself is kind of like the holodeck, just not quite there yet, but it's definitely coming along.
Yeah, they're doing some really cool cutting edge stuff. Okay, next up is PayPal reports their Q3 revenue of $6.1 billion, up 13% year over year. AMD unveils or announces proudly that Meta, as a data center chip customer, as it targets NVIDIA with new chips and a family of server accelerators to boost machine learning and other workloads for their partners like Meta. And Google appears to be using its business profile rebranding effort to solicit small and medium businesses to help Google push back against antitrust regulation. And what this is about is, if you have a business that has a profile page in Google Maps, for example, when you go to Google Maps, you see all kinds of businesses. You click on any of those businesses, you get a little pop-up, which is the business profile page. And so Google is coming under a lot of scrutiny from government regulators. And Google has now figured out a way to get every small business to join them in an effort to push back against the regulators. And so what they've done is Google has sent out an email to the millions and maybe hundreds of millions of people who have businesses, profile pages within Google. And first you get an email that says, hey, why don't you update and manage your business profile? So people can find you in Google search and on Google Maps. Well, if you're a business, you're probably going to click on that. And if you do click on that, it takes you to a page where the very first thing that you see is something that says new laws may impact your business. Proposed legislation could make it harder to find your business online. And so this blog post is saying that this is propaganda. And it says, we are all used to Facebook crying wolf about how small businesses will be hurt by Apple's app privacy initiatives. Now Google has apparently taken a page from Facebook's playbook. When clicked, the call to action takes you to a page titled Understand the Impact New Legislation Could Have on Your Business. On that page, Google details in a very Facebook-like fashion all the pain small businesses will face if the government successfully manages to put in place a regulatory framework to limit Google's unprecedented power and reach. First was a call to join an email list to help with advocacy on behalf of Google. After signing up, the page notes that together we can help shape the policy conversation and have an impact on regulations that affect small businesses and your business. So it asks you to sign up to this email list to stay up to date on all the proposed legislation. And Yeah, they're trying to get all the small businesses, and they're gonna push back and say we've got 4 million businesses that oppose what you're trying to do, and yeah, interesting move, but interesting head fake, as you might call it, where they trick you into updating your profile, and once you're there, the real objective is to get you to kind of get into a signature collection and coordinated effort to help Google resist the regulations that might be coming their way. So, I skipped over one article. Okay, no, it wasn't. It's good I skipped it. So the next one is that the company Nextdoor just did their IPO via a SPAC, and it's now $13 a share, up 17%, now valued at $4.3 billion, which is not a whole lot. Nextdoor I can see it getting much bigger than that. I could see it getting a 50 billion valuation in the next couple of years. So that might be a way to get a 10x return eventually, depending. The next one's from The Guardian. It says documents show that the Los Angeles Police Department, which we Angelinos call the LAPD, has a new predictive policing effort which is similar to surveillance programs that were shut down amid public outcry. So let's take a look. What do they got cooking over there at the LAPD? And it says from The Guardian, LAPD ended predictive policing programs amid public outcry. A new effort shares many of their flaws. Okay. Documents show how data-driven policing programs reinforced harmful patterns, fueling the over-policing of Black and brown communities. The Los Angeles Police Department has been a pioneer in predictive policing, for years touting avant-garde programs that use historical data and software to predict future crime. But newly revealed public documents detail how the department's flagship data-driven programs validated existing patterns of policing and reinforced decisions to police certain people and neighborhoods over others, leading to the over-policing of Black and brown communities in the city. The documents, which include internal LAPD documents and emails, and were released as part of a report by the Stop LAPD Spying Coalition, also suggest that pledges to reform the programs amid rising public criticism largely rang hollow. A new program that took shape after Operation Laser and Predpol were shuttered bears a striking resemblance to the programs it was supposed to reform. Stop LAPD Spying and independent experts who reviewed the document say LAPD's efforts to rebrand as predictive policing experiments mirror a broader shift in the private surveillance industry, the experts say, as companies increasingly reinvent existing products in response to negative press on predictive policing. Rather than reevaluating their whole business model, they're just trying to reframe the value of the product, says Albert Foxconn, the founder of the Surveillance Technology Oversight Project, another anti-police surveillance advocacy group. Here's the quote. They're saying, here's how you can prevent crime by allocating officers and changing patrols and changing who you engage with, and that's going to result in the exact same outcomes. Okay.
Yeah, it seemed too similar to that movie Minority Report with Tom Cruise. Like, hey, given past historical data of crimes in this area, you're under arrest. Or, hey, we should send a squad car there. That seemed to be a little bit ill-conceived, even though the early results seemed a bit promising. So it's nice to see at least a more full disclosure based approach to what failed with this program, because oftentimes minorities get disenfranchised when we try to bring in automation, because the very data sets that we use are biased themselves and encode those very racist and discriminatory factors that we try to avoid by implementing these systems. So it's almost a paradox or a contradiction.
Okay. So next up, a company called Socure, a cloud-based identity verification startup, raises, just $500 million. by Excel at a 4.5 billion valuation. I don't know if this identity verification thing, what do you guys think? Has this actually got any traction when the company unit is $500 million? Get ready. By the way, this headline came out today. I said yesterday at my meeting 24 hours ago that there's new strong evidence that I was right in my predictions that this identity verification game is going to get really hot really fast. And this fundraising announcement happened since my announcement 24 hours ago, that basically I connected a few dots here, which is the new mega infrastructure bill in the US, like $2 trillion infrastructure bill. It's like the biggest thing happening in the world at the moment. Includes some really interesting legislation around cryptocurrency or any kind of digital assets and the exchanging of digital assets, such that the receiver of any digital assets must report that they've received these digital assets and pay taxes on these digital assets, and more importantly, also must reveal the verified identity of the sender of those digital assets, including their social security number, as if it was like a banking transfer or a business transaction. That is very, very normal when I'm sending my invoices to and from my clients, for example, where we have to do W-9s with each other in 1099s, and we need to know and tell the IRS, yeah, this person paid me for this big job that we did, and here's their, their corporate information, their tax
The
ID.
goddamn headache too. It's
Yeah,
what a hassle.
it's a huge headache. But what that headache's about to get 1,000 times worse, because they're essentially saying any digital asset transactions will need to be handled in a similar way. So you're going to need to know the tax ID numbers of anyone who sends you any digital assets, like NFTs, or who knows, even like $1 little virtual swords in a video game is a
So
digital.
there's no lower limit. Usually it was like a few $1,000s right before you had to report
Yes,
these
you're
things, but
right.
this is for any value, right?
We need to find out what the lower limit of that is, and I would highly encourage somebody to help figure that out, because you're right. But it might not even be on it. We need to get very specific. Is there a limit on a per transaction basis or an annual basis? So it could be if you get more than $20,000 or $10,000 in a single year, tax year, then you have to report them. Or
It's
if you're,
Tyler. It's capital gains. It's capital gains bandwidth. So in the US, 40,000 is your initial limit, and then it moves 40 to 440 is 15, and then above 440 is 20.
so you don't have to report anything if you get less than 40,000 for the year.
In a sense of self-declaration, you can go as detailed as you want. So you can, I think I said this morning, you could write losses off against your profits, but as long as you haven't made more than a 40,000 capital gain, there's no need. Should the IRS want to come and declare it, you have to have the details behind all of your transactions. So there's a website, anyone wants to look it up, where, again, we talked about this in Alexandra's session yesterday, great website called Accounting. So like accounting, but accounting. And what they do is they allow you to engage your MetaMask wallet, your Coinbase wallets, etc., and they'll show all the transactions and any gains that were made for you to help with feeding back to the IRS.
But Aaron, is that in line with the new regulations? Because I've heard chatter between, $600 per transaction to $3,000 per transaction, not just for the year. So I'm going to have to look into this specifically to see what the legislation says, because I think this has implications worldwide. Because one, I think it'll increase a lot of risk for personal data, and it'll make things a lot more complicated in terms of keeping track of all of your transactions. But the very nature of cryptocurrency transactions means that you can make a lot of them in a very anonymized way. So how how is what you just said in line with these new regulations, or am I
Yeah.
missing something here?
No. So again, back to John's point earlier, certainly, and anybody doing clippings, I'm not a tax expert, so disclaimer. Um, basically, it comes down to pure capital gains. So in anywhere you make an exchange, so anywhere you make a transaction, sorry, on an exchange, that exchange will declare those details to the IRS. And it's not about anonymity. Any of the registrations that you've done, be it KYC, AML, you will have had to onboard yourself to some of these wallets or some of these digital exchanges to actually authenticate yourself. And so that will be passed on with your details to the IRS. So they can come and ask for specifics. In Europe here, Eric, we have capital gains in the UK to a much lesser degree. It's £12,300. And again, it's all about the gain made on the security, on the asset here. So right now, I think the UK declares crypto assets in 4 categories. This latest bill in the US makes it a bit more complicated, but my understanding from Alexandra's session last night is they're following the capital gains fiat rules to that degree.
Oh, okay, yeah, because the thing that you just said about the places, those exchanges keeping records makes sense. But now, if I conduct some transaction out of those networks, me having to keep track of that seems a little heavy-handed, right?
Yeah, again, I think this comes down to self-declaration versus IRS coming after you.
How is this worked out if you're transferring back and forth between 2 sets of assets then?
That's considered an exchange as well, Carl. So that was part of the bill that we talked about last night and part of the conversation, which is technically you have gotten rid of an asset, and therefore by you getting rid of that asset, you've either made a profit or a loss against your capital gains.
Okay. Thank you for that, Aaron. So the next one...
Oh, sorry, Tyler. I think I broke up there for a moment. But just a quick last 10-second point. I think the feeling I'm getting with a lot of this is that add as much friction as possible to the system so people have to use official, registered, regulated exchanges and make it as difficult as possible to do exactly what you just said there, Aaron, where you're going off-chain. This seems to be the push.
Yeah, and I think what we're seeing and what I'm personally and professionally in my job, what we're seeing regulation playing out where it needs to play out, right? It's still decentralized. It still allows the blockchain to work. It still allows cryptocurrencies to exist. But when it comes to making profit, if you have made a profit, it's right for you to pay tax. Now, let's not get into the corporates don't pay tax on their profits. Us retailers, us retail investors, us retail and regular Joe Soaps, if you've made a profit on what you've invested in, then declare it and pay your tax.
Yeah, you cannot have your cake, eat it, and then use state services for free. Especially, obviously, that means more in the UK than the US.
Okay, so the next one is from the Financial Times about a company called Helsing, Helsing, which uses AI to integrate data and create live maps of battlefields, raises 100 million euros from Daniel Ek of Spotify from his personal investment fund called Prima Materia. He created the fund, almost a year ago, 9 months ago, $1 billion fund. And this is the first announcement of a investment from this new fund. Yeah, so it says, a year after launching the €1 billion investment company to boost European tech, Spotify's co-founder Daniel Ek has placed his first bet with a stake in Helsing, a defense tech startup that produces live maps of battlefields. The startup, which was founded this year and plans to have offices in Germany, Britain, and France, received 100 million euros. That's a hell of an A round, by the way, from Daniel Ek's Prima Materia at the valuation of 400 million. X said he had founded Prematura in September 2020 to identify society's most difficult problems. The software developed by Helsing will use AI to integrate data from infrared, video, sonar, and radio frequencies gleaned from sensors on military vehicles to create a real-time picture of battlefields. Possible applications include helping troops to detect swarming drones, enemy forces, or camouflaged vehicles more accurately than the human eye. Here's the quote: "When it comes to building globally relevant tech companies, it's no secret that Europe has underperformed regions like the US and China," says Eck. But he added that Helsing was a perfect example of how Europe had a tremendous opportunity to lead in new areas, such as building dynamic AI systems in an ethical, transparent, and responsible manner. Torsten Riel, Helsing's chief executive, met Eck after selling a UK gaming startup called Natural Motion to Zynga for just over $500 million. Riel said Europe has been lagging behind the world in AI warfare capabilities, and Helsing's goal was to provide state-of-the-art defense and national security AI capabilities to liberal democracies that have shared values around the rule of law and public accountability. Here's the quote: It's not even about any particular countries, he said. We need AI to serve our democracies. We've overall been lagging behind, and that has to change. Helsing, whose name derives from the German word Hellsicht, or clairvoyance, plans to concentrate initially on selling direct to British, French, and German militaries. There you go.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about that. I think historically Europe has represented imperialism. So hearing that the imperial war machine is, hey, we're investing in next gen technology, sounds like good news, but it also doesn't sound like investment in the right direction. I usually tend to be against military investment. I'd rather see that kind of investment in medicine or education, healthcare, that kind of stuff. But I'm curious what other folks think of Europe really kind of upping its game with military tech.
I mean, I think it's interesting that we're seeing it. As in, I think a lot of this kind of software and technology is developed, but it's normally behind closed doors, and potentially either directly by governments or subcontracted out. Things like DARPA and that kind of thing. So I think it's interesting that it's just this publicly viewable sort of startup that's getting this funding. I'm curious if anybody has any information on how these things normally play out. As in, if you're developing munitions, actual hardware, there's certain like regulation and agreements that each country you sell to. You don't want one company selling all of their weapons to every single country on the earth. I mean, that's otherwise it makes the whole thing kind of pointless. So I'm curious, does anybody have any insight what happens when it comes to software? Because obviously they're making this and they want to sell it to as many countries as possible. But if everybody has it, then who has the advantages? So
Well, there are specific amendments, for example, in the U.S., when they developed the F-22, it was actually, I think, voted by Congress so that it was not allowed to be sold to other parties, specifically Israel, because the concern there was that Israel would turn around and sell that technology to other folks who may not necessarily be the best allies to the United States. So from the I guess, business perspective, what will be the constraints for a European company trying to do business in this kind of theater? So I'm not sure what the regulatory framework there is in terms of algorithms or what kind of technological capabilities. I know as myself, a biotech company here in Canada, we have a specific statement in our shareholder agreements and all these other pieces of paperwork where, we agree that if the Department of Defense comes in and says, hey, we need access to this information, that we already have preemptively complied with that in writing to some extent. So it would be interesting to see the fine print there, although that will probably not see the light of day, or it might get leaked. But
Okay, so the next one is a related one, Hawkeye 360, which sells data and insights from its satellites that identify and geolocate a broad set of radio frequency signals, raises $145 million. There you go. And then we've got this one, that how auction houses are chasing crypto millions. That Sotheby's and Christie's, the two big auction houses in the US, are bringing in crypto-rich NFT buyers. NFTs now account for 5.5% of contemporary art sales at the world's top auction houses, and probably gaining quickly. Imagine we'll get to 10%, sometime next year. That's kind of amazing. So the next one is Vice just did a piece on, the title says, How Facebook is Stoking a Civil War in Ethiopia. Online hate is adding fuel to the country's deadly conflict. Yes. And researchers say Facebook is failing to stop it. Okay, but they're not necessarily creating it. The humans are creating the hate. They're sharing it on Facebook. Facebook isn't silencing what might be their free speech in many cases. By the way, Ethiopia has more than 100 million people and 38 languages. So how many of those languages would you like them to police? And
All
how many of those?
38, Tyler. You know that Facebook is God. They should be able to do it in a jiffy.
Let's do all 38 languages of those 100 million people. Facebook. Listen, you have 3.5 billion people. Please control everything they're all saying. You're only going to need maybe one moderator for, say, every 10 people. So go ahead and employ 350 million people to control the complete idiocracy of humankind. It's up to you, Facebook. We're dependent on you to fix our fucking stupidity. We can't control ourselves. Facebook is our responsibility is no longer our responsibility. It's your responsibility, Facebook, because you're letting me talk on your platform, so you're responsible. It's no longer I'm responsible. We're not responsible. Facebook, you're responsible because you're letting me talk. Please fix the issue. You're, as Vice is saying in their headline, you're stoking a civil war. How Facebook is stoking a civil war in Ethiopia. And what I
It's
would
like
love to
standards, isn't it, Tyler? When you think that the whole of the Arab Spring was driven by social media, no one had a problem then.
So, how on earth did Hitler manage to do that without Facebook?
Facebook was there, you just didn't know it.
Ah,
Controlling information through like book burning and all that fun jazz.
amazing that post Facebook, all of this troubles of humankind all seem to coordinate right around the time Facebook started. Coincidence? So,
You've heard of the great Facebook crusades in the Middle Ages, Tyler. Facebook
we
was,
can't forget the Facebook wars.
yeah, they were championing the overthrow of Jerusalem back in the day.
Yeah, they gave Mao Zedong a voice too, I heard.
Oh my God, Pol Pot! The Pol Pot account was on fire. Yeah. So
My
anyway,
goodness.
okay. So now we get into the tweets. Like Evan, you just shared this one about Heinz ketchup in space or something like that.
Yeah, I was very happy with my my tagline, "Ground control to major tomato." But basically, I mean, it's a PR marketing stunt, genius from Heinz tomato ketchup. Basically, the first tomatoes grown in Martian soil conditions in space. So
I
there's
know.
a nice picture of a Heinz bottle. I mean, I wonder how many media mentions that'll get. It's off the charts. Genius.
So I just tweeted it to the Tech News Twitter account, and it says, "This is ketchup, but not as you know it. Heinz has created Heinz Tomato Ketchup Mars Edition. Ketchup tomatoes grown in Martian soil conditions. Join me on Heinz social media channels tomorrow at 3 p.m. to find out more about this out-of-this-world experiment. And that would be amazing. Although if we could grow tomatoes on Mars, that itself is amazing. Converting that to ketchup is not the amazing part of that announcement. It's the fact that you grew fucking tomatoes on Mars. Something tells me it's Mars-like conditions means it was done somewhere not on Mars. So the next tweet is from Dr. Fran from Gizmodo. The headline reads, Space Force detects mystery object in orbit alongside Chinese satellite. They're calling it an apogee kick mortar, but the object's true identity and purpose remain unknown. Okay, and China's Shenzhou-21 spacecraft, a satellite with the stated purpose of cleaning up space junk, has an orbital companion, but we're not entirely sure what it is. The Shenzhou-21 satellite was launched to space on October 23rd. Chinese state-run Xinhua news agency said that the spacecraft entered the planned orbit successfully and that it will be mainly used to test and verify space debris mitigation technologies. That's pretty much all we know about Shenzhou-21, as China tends to be tight-lipped when it comes to its affairs in space. But on November 3, the U.S. military detected a companion object in orbit alongside Shenzhou-21. As Space News reports, Space Force's 18th Space Control Squadron cataloged it as an apogee kick mortar and assigned it to the designation 2021-094C. Apogee kick mortars are used to put payloads into their target orbits, a good example being satellites moved from their transfer orbits to geostationary orbits, also known as GEO. Satellites will sometimes eject their apogee kick mortars after use, but as astrophysicist Jonathan McDowell from the Harvard-Smithsonian Center of Astrophysics explained in an email, this is pretty rare and almost always done by launching to the GEO graveyard, ejecting the mortar, and then lowering the payload to the GEO proper. McDowell is likewise uncertain about the companion object being an apogee kick mortar. Currently, both Xinjiang-21 and the now named 2021-094C are in orbit some 50 miles above pure GEO, which is well within the band used by rotating GEO satellites, he said. The two objects are 37 miles apart, which appears to be a deliberate synchronization, says McDowell, to which he added, if you've just ejected and said bye-bye, you don't expect a steadily increasing separation. Or you would expect a steadily increasing separation. McDowell suspects that these two things are active payloads working in tandem, possibly monitoring radio signals from other GEO satellites. But he said we'll have to wait a few months to see if either object makes some kind of maneuver to be sure. Importantly, China's TGS-3 satellite did something similar back in 2018, producing a companion object, or sub-satellite. The pair maneuvered in concert and carried out operations including spoofing, which includes coordinated maneuvers at certain times in an attempt to confuse rivals' space tracking networks, according to Space News. And here's another quote. I don't know why Space Force thinks these second objects are apogee kick mortars. Is it just an incorrect guess or That said, we believe the two missions are related in some way. Okay. And Evan, you sent in this one. About 7% of U.S. adults are very likely to use buy now, pay later services this holiday season. 14% said they're somewhat likely to use buy now, pay later. 79% said they're not likely at all to use buy now, pay later. However, there's a very important announcement in the buy now, pay later space that I highlighted at my event 24 hours ago here in Stockholm with a very distinguished live audience of about 450 people. One of the biggest news articles from Scandinavia in recent days is the partnership between Klarna, the pioneers of buy now, pay later, and Stripe, who's the world's biggest fintech company. In fact, Klarna is the number 2 world's biggest fintech company. So this is a partnership between the 2 largest fintech companies on the planet. And when I read about the partnership, I said, I think I know who did that partnership. My friend Eric Olofsson, who's from Stockholm, who works at Stripe, who runs Stripe for Europe, who does partnerships. He's very good friends with Klarna. I bet he did that partnership. I pinged him. I said, hey, Eric, did you do that partnership? He said, yes, I did. I said, would you like to come to my live event tonight and jump on stage and tell us about it? He said, of course. So he did. And we went out for dinner afterwards. And it's genius. So what this does is, as every geek and every developer in the audience knows, Stripe works with millions and millions and millions of websites, including Clubhouse, to allow payments, like the tip jar feature in Clubhouse. Now, because Stripe is the payment, the fintech, the kind of financial power behind every website you use these days, including Clubhouse, now every website that uses Stripe to accept payments and receive payments and do financial transactions can now click with a single button that can turn on buy now, pay later onto their website. So the millions and millions and millions of Stripe websites that use Stripe can now offer Klarna buy now, pay later as part of their website. So Klarna is now part of millions and millions and millions of websites today that they were not part of yesterday. So that is a truly brilliant partnership. So I think a lot more people are going to be
delivery.
Yeah, go ahead.
The people worried about the hype exceeding the actual execution are going to be muted pretty soon because the execution is just exploding. So that the market is huge. I just don't know enough about the specifics of it to have an enlightened comment today.
But to put it in even simpler terms, every website that allows accepting or buying of anything or credit cards of anything will now offer buy now, pay later. At least have the option to with a single click, which they will have a very high motive to turn that on. And a very
Tyler,
low. Yeah.
Is there a glitch in the matrix? Because Tyler, were you
Tyler, I think you went backwards there.
speaking the whole time?
Yes.
Yeah, we didn't hear anything for the last 3 minutes approximately.
Yep.
So if you've
You
been
were muted,
transmitting, we have
actually.
not been receiving.
Can you hear me now?
Yes,
We
we
can hear you
can.
now.
Okay. So where did you lose me? I was talking about Stripe and Klarna.
No.
Totally.
From the
Yeah, we
About
beginning.
5 minutes
were
ago.
You were
hearing
mute.
From
Zero.
the beginning.
You were muted for at least 5 minutes.
Holy
Is this
shit.
a new Clubhouse feature where
I
you go
told
back
you
in
a few
time?
times, but you
And in the
couldn't hear
middle,
me.
it.
Cammy read host.
Yeah, in the
It felt
meantime,
like a
Cammy read a NVIDIA blog.
it felt like
Okay.
a parallel dimension. Tyler just jumped in and
Oh no.
totally
You
hit a
mean
tangent there.
Wow.
Whole
Tyler,
new
you
twist
couldn't
to
hear us at
metaverse.
all?
He
Cue
must have
the
been
X
on a
Files
roll to
music.
speak for 5
We lose
Okay,
minutes
he's
Tyler
live.
gone
again?
again. He's gone again.
Oh.
I'm here. No, I'm still here.
Q in the
Oh,
Twilight
okay.
Zone.
So
So when we
reading.
couldn't hear you, you couldn't hear us too?
No,
That's very strange.
Oh,
I was reading the article that Evan sent in that 7% of U.S. adults think that they will use buy now, pay later this holiday season.
Okay, go ahead. Start from the top.
Okay, so Evan sent in the article, I just tweeted it, that only 7% of U.S. adults feel that they're very likely to use buy now, pay later. And they're wrong. 14% think they might use it. 79% are sure they're not going to use it. And I have very strong evidence that they're very, very wrong. And would you like to hear my evidence?
Yes.
Okay.
Sure.
So there was one of the biggest headlines in recent days in Europe is a partnership between the world's 2 biggest fintechs, which is Stripe, which has a $100 billion valuation, and Klarna, which is the creator of Buy Now, Pay Later, which is a $50 billion valuation from Stockholm. And that partnership was done by one of my dear friends, Eric Olofsson, who I had dinner with last night. And he came and spoke at my event on very short notice. I said, hey, we're going to talk about this is one of the biggest news headlines in European tech. You're the guy who did you're the guy who did the partnership between Stripe and Klarna, because you're one of the key executives at Stripe. And he's very good friends with Klarna, as am I. Would you like to come talk about the backstory behind the deal? And he did. Now, what's so interesting about this deal is Stripe powers, as you probably know, tens of millions of websites, including Clubhouse, to allow financial transactions, which in the case of Clubhouse is the tip jar. But they also do all of the financial transactions of Shopify, for example, and Spotify, for example, and every website you go to and buy anything, that's being done in the background by Stripe. Now, all those millions of Stripe websites will now magically, in a single click, be able to offer Buy Now, Pay Later by Klarna. Meaning, when somebody's going to check out, they don't have to pay everything today. They can defer payments into 4 separate monthly payments, which means they're more likely to buy. So nearly everyone who can will probably turn that feature on, which means tens of millions of websites will now have Klarna's Buy Now, Pay Later next week that don't have it today.
What's interesting about that is that the Americans never used ClearPay, so they used Klarna instead. When with what you were talking about with the Sequoia thing, it seems like Klarna did a very heavy move here to secure this.
It's a really brilliant partnership. So I think a lot of people are going to be using Buy Now, Pay Later. They just don't realize it, because it's going to be coming to every website on the internet very, very soon. So the next article is from Aaron. That Solana and Lightspeed and FTX announce a $100 million investment focused on blockchain. The intersection of gaming and blockchain is where digital assets play a key role in the payment layer of Web3, says Aaron, which is, of course, exactly right as usual. Could you say more, Aaron, if he's still on stage?
I guess not.
Okay.
No, Aaron is not here anymore. Yes.
Yeah, but we've covered that previously, but it's a great point. So the next one is from Cheryl, and it's a tweet from Brian Chesky, who's the CEO of Airbnb, and he says,
"Oh, that's a long one.
I think we're on the verge of a revolution in travel. Before the pandemic, most people were tethered to place and worked because they had to go into an office. The pandemic accelerated the mass adoption of technologies like Zoom that allowed millions of people to work from home. Suddenly, they are untethered from their need to work in specific places and times. Millions of people can now travel anytime, anywhere, for any length, and even live anywhere. All you have to believe is that Zoom is here to stay, to believe this trend is here to stay. This newfound flexibility is bringing about a revolution in how we travel. In recent months, some of the largest companies in the world, like Amazon, Procter & Gamble, Ford, and PricewaterhouseCoopers, have announced increased flexibility for employees to work remotely, and I expect more companies to follow. We're seeing this in our data. Travel anytime. Mondays and Tuesdays are fastest growing days of the week for families to travel. Travel anywhere. Over 100,000 towns and cities had a booking on Airbnb during the pandemic. Live anywhere between July and September. 1 in 5 nights booked were for a month or longer. This is our fastest growing category by trip length. So basically, people aren't just traveling on Airbnb, they're now living on Airbnb. Okay, last tweet. To respond to this moment, I'll share some updates to the Airbnb service at 8 a.m. Pacific tomorrow on our homepage, etc. I agree. I think you're right, Brian. We got the data after all. So the next one's from Evan. It says the triopoly of Google, Facebook, and Amazon will take. Oh, what a perfect opportunity to play our favorite game show, everybody. Wake up, Messi. It's time for Tech News Jeopardy. So, Facebook, Google, and Amazon, the big ad networks. The question is, what percentage of the ad money will Google, Facebook, and Amazon take in 2021? By the end of 2021, what percentage of advertising money will Google, Facebook, and Amazon take?
47.
Like collectively,
I would
Yes.
say 60. I would
I'm gonna
say
say like
60.
70%.
30.
Ladies and gentlemen, you can't mess with Messi. She wins it again.
No
Oh my
way.
gosh!
64%. Messi guessed 60.
You
Wow.
are serious. Oh my goodness. My day back today. There you go. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, the score is now about 30 to 1 to 1 to 1 to 1. Everyone's got about one
I
or two.
don't think I
Yeah,
am
I
that.
only got like one.
So
So
those
you
times
Messi
know,
is
now.
definitely a globe of the future.
I'm reminded of this program that DARPA was running a while ago. I don't know what became of it, but they would have people do read the news and do open source news analysis. And I think and there are others that do that, that use that methodology. I think Messi would just
She would
mop the
slay
floor
it.
with them.
She would slay it.
Gonna have to this. I think I'm gonna buy lottery nowadays. I don't know. I think I'm just being lucky. Thanks.
Okay, next article from Axios from PT Yoder in the audience. Axios says they have an exclusive that the new bipartisan bill in the U.S. would require algorithm-free versions of tech platforms. Oh my dear Lord. Holy cow. Where's the
Wait.
record scratch sound? This bill requires tech platforms to offer users an option to view content unsorted by algorithms. Okay, well that's a different. Okay, now it's your headline is screwed up. That's not, those are two totally different things. So, Twitter offers that, Facebook offers that. Yeah, they can all offer that. That's actually not that big of a deal. So, yeah, okay, fine. Many of them do, and the rest can, and that's not that big of a problem. Actually, no one's going to use it, but that will highlight a very interesting point, which is people want to claim and delegate responsibility to these platforms, and fine, use the non-algorithm, the algorithm-free versions of Twitter and Facebook. You can do that. You can do that today. No one uses it. No one wants to use that. It's not a better experience. However, now you can't really blame the algorithms for the fact that you hate your life and your friends and you want to kill yourself and everybody else. And, we can't blame, the Oklahoma City bomber on Facebook because he had the option to use the algorithm-free version and he didn't. It's his fault. It's his responsibility for his behavior.
Yeah, the algorithm made me do it seems to be kind of what they're arguing against there. But in general, when we say like the headline that you first presented, I was like, wait, algorithm-free platforms. I was like, that's like saying a transistor-free computer. I was like,
Exactly.
how is that? How's
Well,
that
that's because
possible?
it's another example of journalists not understanding tech fundamentally and writing stupid headlines that make no sense.
Yeah, I
But,
was scratching my head there.
right. So the next one's from Dr. Fran from The Economist. And it says 10 tech trends to watch in the coming year. So let's see what The Economist thinks that the tech trends will be. And this is kind of like asking geeks what the economic trends will be. So let's see. It says, number one, democracy versus autocracy. America's midterm elections and China's Communist Party Congress will vividly contrast their rival political systems. Okay. Number 2, pandemic to endemic, with the new antiviral pills, improved antibody treatments, and more vaccines coming. Yep, we're switching from a pandemic to an endemic. Yes, John has said exactly that.
Big mistake.
Inflation worries, supply chain disruptions, and a spike in energy demand have pushed up prices. Yep. Central bankers say it's temporary, but not everyone believes them. Yep. Number 4, the future of work. There's a broad consensus that the future is hybrid and that more people will spend more days working from home, but there is more scope for disagreement on the details. How many days and which ones, etc. Yep. The new techlash. Regulators in America and Europe have been trying to rein in tech giants for years, but have yet to make a dent in their growth or profits. Now China has taken the lead, lashing its tech firms into a brutal crackdown. Yep. Number 6, crypto grows up. Like all disruptive technologies, cryptocurrencies are being domesticated as that's a great way to say it, by the way. As regulators tighten the rules, central banks are also looking to launch their own centralized digital currencies. Yes. Number 7, climate crunch. Even as wildfires, heat waves, and floods increase in frequency, a striking lack of urgency prevails among policymakers when it comes to tackling climate change. Very true. Number 8, travel trouble. Activity is picking up activity is picking up as economies reopen, but countries that pursued a zero COVID suppression strategy, such as Australia and New Zealand, face a tricky task of managing the transition to a world in which the virus is endemic. Very true. You guys managed to control it, the rest of the world can't. So the rest of the world is playing friendly with each other because they couldn't control it. You controlled it, and now you're suffering because now you have to figure out how to let all of the people who couldn't control themselves. How are you going to be able to go to participate when the rest of the world was not able to control itself? Congratulations, you won, and you lost. That's so sad. Anyway, number 9, space races. 2022 will be the first year in which more people go to space as paying passengers than government employees. Yes, true. And lastly, number 10, political footballs. The Winter Olympics in Beijing and the Football World Cup in Qatar, meaning soccer for the Americans, will be reminders of how sports can bring the world together, but also how big sporting events often end up being political footballs. Expect protests directed at both hosts countries. As I've told you would happen, you're going to have a boycott of the Beijing Games. They're already starting. Though boycotts by national teams seems unlikely. Right, that's true. The rapid development of mRNA coronavirus vaccines, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so those are the Economist 10 trends to watch in the coming year. Thank you for that one, Dr. Fran.
Yeah, I heard something that about Qatar and what their LGBT rights have changed. Something to that effect. Just recently, like a lot of people were sharing it in my circle, and yeah, they were boycotting the World Cup, the football World Cup, soccer. I don't know how to not call it football, but yeah, so it's they're scared that like gay Australian footballers were scared and stuff like that. So, and obviously football as the sport, the global sport, it's 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 very inclusive. So, and it doesn't like the way that people riot during it. It hates at least the organizations hate the hoodlumism around it. So they do everything they can to quell it. So they did that with the Black Lives Matter protests and people not being racist, say no to racism and all of that stuff. So we're actually seeing it play out right now, and possibly gonna see what happens with because the bill that Qatar passed has nothing to do with the football, but yeah, somehow they've just been tied in together just in the past couple of days.
Okay. So Evan, what's this new one here about Twitter Blue?
Yeah, it's generally available. for most people, I haven't seen it yet, but basically their premium subscription feature service from Twitter, where you get like ad-free browsing and different configurations. I think an edit button for like $3 a month. So it's
Hmm.
kind of a no-brainer for me. But
Hmm.
it looks like
Yeah,
it's
because
launched globally.
you're quite the power user there on Twitter. I'm curious also, I just had Twitter's version of the Clubhouse, they call Twitter Spaces. The Twitter Spaces was notably missing the hallway. Their version of the hallway just went live in my phone, so I can now see lots of Twitter Spaces in a hallway like mode. And I'm curious for how many other people that might have been turned on.
I know Heyman had his hallway turned on maybe a
Yes,
week or two ago,
right,
but it's weird that that the feature that kind of galvanizes a network or a community is missing. How do you discover content outside of your Twitterverse if you don't have a hallway? It's kind of
right,
strange.
yeah.
Random, and it's a big fail. Yeah.
Well, no, they're intentionally slow rolling it out to um, in a very strategic way. I mean, they know you don't have it, and they know they don't want you to have it, and they're slowly rolling it out in some kind of very coordinated plan. And I'm just curious. It'll be interesting if you're on stage and you can hear my voice. Please notify me when you get it turned on, because mine just turned on
Are you,
today.
are you talk about the Twitter Spaces?
The Twitter
No.
Spaces
Yeah, I
hallway.
have it. I have it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've got that as well. Yeah, I've got it. I had it last time I updated.
Uh-huh. Okay, so Evan and Demolaire. Okay, if everyone else could let me know. So the next one is from Kinsha.
Yesterday is still not that great, Tyler.
What?
I say the user experience is still not that great. I guess we are all. I mean, for at least I'm spoiled by the ease of use of Clubhouse. Like for example, I can jump out and in, right? And I'm still be like on stage or wherever I am. But for Twitter Space, there was a glitch yesterday, so I was bounced off, and when I go back again, I was like back in the audience. So it's just not so comfortable.
Yeah, and
And
there's
meaning to say that you can't, when you're in it, you can't really get out because, as in, you have to make sure you stay in the room. So it's very restrictive, not so flexible.
Okay,
So
so
I don't really like it.
that's
yeah,
great. The next
and
article, we're not talking about Twitter Spaces, thanks. The next
Sorry.
one is about, from Kinsha, that China says that the India government-backed group called Evil Flower is attacking China and shutting down airline data. Chinese Twitter users, which is called Weibo in China, are also asking why the country hasn't recovered the Chumi waterfall from India. Some suggest occupying it. That's amazing. China says that India's government-backed group Evil Flower is attacking China, shutting down airline data, and Chinese citizens are asking the Chinese government, "Hey, Chinese government, why haven't you taken back the Chumi Gyatso waterfall in the Arunachal Pradesh uh, from India?" And they're suggesting they should occupy it. That's wild.
And then they have kung fu fighting at the border of those two countries because they can't use weapons, but they're allowed to beat each other to death with their fists, which is kind of crazy if you think about that is tolerated at that border, which is very tense. So any weapons or arms fire,
Correct.
not acceptable. But any kung fu
That's correct.
fighting, kind of like Street Fighter, okay.
Well, yes, but that's because of the rules of war. Is like who fired first. But if nobody fired, then you didn't fire first. Yeah.
You can use sticks, iron sticks, something like that.
Yep.
Yeah, so the cyber has very kind of gray areas of definition for first strike. First of all, it's hard to actually identify who's attacking you. You know that someone is attacking you, but to know that beyond a doubt, beyond a reasonable doubt, you have to have most likely 0-day exploits that allow you to take hold of the opposition teams' computers and surveil them. And jokingly, we've seen this on CNN, where CNN travels to China and says, hey, by the way, we know that 90% of attacks come from this building here. And then you see the Chinese soldiers chasing the CNN truck and that kind of stuff. So the tension between India and China is quite concerning, all joking aside. And cyber has a lot of implications, and you can quite literally cripple a country just with cyber without ever firing a shot. So the whole idea of the definitions of war, or what counts for an act of war, might have to change going forward. And America has actually proposed this in previous bills to change the definition so that any strike that is cyber is considered an act of war, and America can therefore retaliate proportionally, or most likely disproportionately.
Okay.
And by the way, nobody will ever be able to do the equivalent of putting Colin Powell on the spot for coming up with false information, because we'll never know.
Okay. Next up here, Cheryl found this one, that 1 billion people to face deadly heat stress if the world warms to 2 degrees Celsius, which it absolutely will. So we're going to have 1 billion people face deadly heat stress. That's very true, and they'll have to relocate. And Monica found this one, that MasterCard launches Buy Now, Pay Later card for Asia. So MasterCard's getting into the Buy Now, Pay Later because it's killing their business. So you either, if you can't beat them, join them, which they are definitely doing. And then Dr. Fran found our next Tech News Jeopardy. The headline says, do consumers really want NFTs? Forrester data shows that many U.S. adults don't know what NFTs are. The question is, what percentage of U.S. adults don't know what an NFT is?
Percent.
75.
I think I'm gonna say 85%.
90%.
Say 86%.
I'm gonna stick to 75.
70.
Okay, who had the lowest number?
BB.
70. Yeah. Really?
You win it with 7. So the answer was,
finally one score.
the answer was 50%.
Messi, I have
50-50?
32
Yeah.
trees.
Wow. So that means 50% of Americans know what NFT means?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's great.
Well, they've heard of it. They don't know what it
I've
is.
heard
They've
of
heard.
it.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
They've heard that
Yeah.
Beeple sold a JPEG for 69 or 60
that's right.
something million dollars.
That's right. So
Damn, not even a PNG.
the next one's from
Oh,
Dr.
right, my bad.
This next one's kind of interesting, from Dr. Fran. It says that the gateway to the metaverse will be your local shopping mall. Facebook may be planning retail stores to help build its metaverse, part of a trend of tech companies using brick and mortar to sell virtual worlds. Exactly right. And I think this is exactly right. I think Facebook is going to open little shops inside of shopping malls, because shopping malls desperately need to sell for stores, as e-commerce is killing everything. And a lot of people go to shopping malls with a lot of spare time on their hands. And Facebook can open a shop and let them try on. And it's a little Oculus store where they can buy Oculus and they can try it out and have the experience of it. And they need to get everyone trying it out and buying their platform. So no doubt they're going to do that. So that's a brilliant point. The next one from Cheryl, she found this one from Bloomberg, that a digital euro will probably become a legal tender in the euro area if the European Central Bank proceeds with its launch, says executive board members. There you go. Here it comes, digital euro. The next one's from Dr. Fran, that silk modified to reflect sunlight keeps skin 12 degrees Celsius cooler. That's like 24 No, what it was 12 degrees Celsius would be, nearly 20 degrees cooler than cotton. Silk has been modified through the addition of nanoparticles to reflect 95% of sunlight, which means that the material stays extra cool on a hot day. And Austin, Texas has a new unicorn. Congratulations to Austin, Texas. And Starlink and OneWeb, which is their competitor from India, can satellite broadband bridge India's digital divide? Yes, it can. I can answer that for you very easily. And that takes us to the end of another Tech News Around the World. Thank you, everybody, for helping out once again. And we'll catch you next time. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you,
Question.
Tyler.
Um,
Yeah,
Kemi
go
has a room
Tyler.
coming up.
Love this
Kemi
one.
has a
so
room coming up.
Tyler, Tyler,
Hold
TTYL
on.
gang.
Hold
hi
on.
guys.
Okay,
Kemi, you can
お聞いてね。
start your room first, Kemi. Please start
Tyler,
your room first.
Tyler,
Yeah, let me start the room.
Tyler.
Yep.
Can I
We can
ask
move
a
over to
question,
Technology
AI
training
Cheryl?
this
Related
week.
Newsroom.
Message
Hold,
Can I
asking.
ask a
hold
question,
on, Messy.
Cheryl?
Hold on, Messy.
Yes.
Hold
Okay.
on. So Cammie's going to open her room now, and we're going to pin it to the top. There it is. It's at the
Yeah,
top of
already
the
pinned on
room.
top. Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
And as soon as she gets it
Oh,
open, we'll all jump over there. What's up, Messy?
I was gonna ask the Africa room for tomorrow. I was gonna schedule it. Should I move it by an hour too? Like it used to be at 8, but it looks like you're starting techniques around the world at
Oh,
6. So
Let me
yeah,
see.
because of the time zone adjustment. So yeah, you can start
right.
2.5 to 3 hours after that. Yes.
Yeah, so I should push it by an hour, right? Which is 9 now. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you, Messi.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay, see
Bless
you in
up.
Kemi's room.
Gang on.
Okay.
See you.
Already.
Good to see you, Messi.
Yep.